Hello treasure, I have another story. This one is The Worst Witch All at Sea. This is what it says on the back of the book. Mildred Hubble, the worst witch in Miss Cackle's Academy for Witches, can't bear to leave behind her beloved cat Tabby when the class goes for a week beside the seaside, but keeping Tabby leads Mildred into yet more trouble. Let's see what happens. A violent snowstorm greeted the pupils of Miss Cackle's Academy for Witches as they returned to school for the first day of the summer term. There were 2 terms dividing the school year, the winter term, which began in September, continuing until January, and the summer term, which began in March, ending in July. With 5 solid months to each term, you can imagine how bleak it felt during the middle months, when every minute seemed like an hour. With no light flickering at the end of the tunnel, the girls were used to appalling weather for the first few weeks of the summer term because it was so early in the year. But this time it had surpassed itself. Miss Cackle, the kindly headmistress of the school, watched from her study window, and the pupils arrived in 1s and 2s, battling to stay on their broomsticks, cloaks turned inside out, and summer dresses flapping wildly in the screaming wind. Mildred Hubble, now a 2nd year, already renowned as the worst witch in the school, lurched out of the yellow-grey clouds with a crust of snow covering her broomstick, cat, suitcase and summer dress, which was a new design this year. Miss Hardbroom, Mildred's horrifically strict form mistress, had decided that the old design of black and grey checks was too frivolous for the girls and had persuaded the headmistress to have them replaced with nice, sensible, plain black. Miss Cackle had meekly agreed with Miss Hardbroom's plan, as she usually did, being a person who always avoided any trouble. But she had secretly rather liked the old uniform. The whole business had caused much merriment among the girls, who could scarcely believe that anyone, even Miss Hardbroom, could consider black and grey checks and grey ankle socks to be frivolous. Mildred wondered if she was actually frozen to her broomstick as she struggled to steer it over the wall and into the yard. She turned to check that her tabby cat was still with her. He was, as the poor creature was terrified of flying at the best of times and had been yowling his head off for the whole journey. He was, but as they cleared the top of the gates by inches, the little cat attempted to jump off, causing Mildred to crash land into a deep snowdrift, which curved in an elegant arc against one of the broomstick sheds. It was quite sheltered in the yard, and Mildred lay in the snow, getting her breath back, watching the other pupils coming into land, most of them more successfully than she had. "You are a pain, Tabby," she said, Mildred's teeth chattering with cold. "How am I ever going to get anywhere in this place while I'm stuck with a cat like you?" Tabby shook himself, and the snow sprayed across Mildred's already snow-covered face. She even had icicles hanging from the brim of her hat, and Tabby's fur stood out in a little frozen peak. They made a sorry pair. "Maud, is that you?" Mildred called out as a hunched bundle of broomstick and baggage wobbled over the wall and glided into the snow a few yards away. "Millie!" yelled a voice, which was unmistakably that of her best friend. "Incredible weather, isn't it? And they call this the summer term." Mildred scrambled to her feet, brushing off as much snow as she could. She waded across to Maud, dragging her suitcase and broomstick behind her. Tabby had now assumed his usual position, draped around Mildred's shoulders like a fur stole. Do you think they might light a few fires as a special concession? Asked Mildred. Oh, I wouldn't think so, said Maud. You know what they're like. Healthy fresh air at all times. Frivolous, I ask you. The yard was rapidly filling up with pupils, all stamping their feet to try and keep warm, and hoping that they might be allowed inside instead of assembling in the snowy yard as usual. They made a rather dramatic sight, dotted about like crows against the glaring white of the snow. The main door opened and Ethel Hollow, a member of Mildred's class, generally known for her bossiness, especially towards Mildred, appeared with a note which she pinned to the door. The note read, "No one is allowed inside without permission. Girls must assemble in lines in the yard. When the bell rings, they should proceed to the cloakrooms in single file to deposit their bags and from there proceed to morning assembly in the great hall." "I told you," said Maud grimly. "And how did Ethel get inside when we're all out here? That's what I'd like to know. Look at her, all dry and comfortable when everyone else is out here frozen stiff, waiting to be summoned out into the storm." "Watch out, Maud," said Mildred. "She's beckoning to us." "Mildred Hubble," shouted Ethel from the shelter of the doorway. "Miss Cackle wants to see you in her study straight away. Didn't take you long this time, did it?" She couldn't resist sneering. "How long have you been here? 5 minutes, is it?" She pulled the face, then ducked inside, closing the door behind her. "Oh, Maud," said Mildred, "Miss Cackle must have seen me crash landing. You think she'd have let me off a bit with a force 9 gale and a blizzard going on?" "No chance." "Oh, never mind, Mill," comforted Maud. "I wish she wanted to see me. There'd be a fire roaring in her study, and at least you'll be able to warm up a bit. Anyway, I bet it's not even about your crash landing. Probably something perfectly pleasant." "Perfectly pleasant," giggled Mildred. "Well, I better go and find out what I've done. Why don't you see if you can find Enid while I'm in there? She must have arrived by now." Enid was their other friend. "Good idea," said Maud. "Best of luck then." Mildred gathered up her suitcase and broom and made her way up the snow-clad stone steps and in through the heavy front door. That's where we leave it. If you want to know what happens to the girls, borrow the book and find out. So, the worst witch, all at sea. Bye for now, treasure.